Welcome everyone, I'm Jeff St Laurent. This is the Tuesday call. We got some good information today in terms of helping you create your voice. A really big piece to our business is having that confidence and that poise and that posture to speak a message and taking a position with a message, and we're going to get into that. I always record the Tuesday calls for those of you that obviously are on the call for obviously any notes or you want to hear any replays. I post them in my university, usually on every Friday, unless I'm like really busy and at the beach or something like that. But anyways, my website sellingcoaching.com, and then if you go to the university, you'll notice that there's a bunch of videos there. You can go to the Tuesday night call under the categories, and then you can access the recordings there as well as other videos. Also, you can check out there. I have some available for one-on-one mentoring if you're in a place where you're really looking for some guidance. I find a lot of coaches try and piece together a lot of free stuff. There is a lot of great stuff out there, and obviously my stuff, and then there's some other stuff as well. But if you're really serious about moving forward with your business and creating income, I definitely recommend working with a mentor, someone like myself. So if that's something you're interested in, you can email me directly. Just go to my website, sellingcoaching.com. You can go to Work With Me page and email me directly from there. I also have a group mentoring program if you work better in groups. We're doing that now for 4 weeks. We launched a program about a month ago, and it's been doing really well with people. So if you're interested in doing that as well, right now it's been great because we get smaller numbers as I just launched it. So we're getting some good individual time with what we have there. Again, if you're interested in that, that's my JSL Mentoring Mastermind. You can also email me directly from my website, sellingcoaching.com, or just use my email, jeff@sellingcoaching.com. So we're gonna launch right into some content here, and then of course at the end we'll open up for some information. And today is really all about taking our message and starting to understand, like, what is our message and what are we speaking to people? Because as a coach, it's so important for us to recognize who it is we're going after and what we're going after. And what I mean by that is that if we don't, people call it your niche. I like to say one message from what audience. But one of the things you want to think about is that if you don't really define what your message is, and more specifically who it's for, and what you're helping them with specifically, what happens is that you blend in. And there's so many coaches out there. There's so many entrepreneurs who are looking to help people with different aspects of their lives. Personal development, life coaching, it's a very general and vague message. It's a very powerful one. We all know the power of personal development. At least I hope you know the power of the personal development. We all know the power of coaching. But again, it's why when you're learning to become a coach, if you went through, let's say more, if I can say, a formal education like with a coaching school, when you learn that, the biggest thing is you recognize that people can only really understand what coaching is through experiencing it. That's why as coaches, we tend to give out complimentary sessions. We give an experience for those that are interested in working with us, because they have to experience it. They have to understand, emotionally what coaching actually is, but more importantly, what coaching can do for them. It doesn't really matter what coaching is, but it's like, how is it going to help them in their world at that moment? And when they have that emotional experience, that's when they can attach value to what they're about to purchase. And you have to remember, when it comes to purchasing something, and I always relate things back to selling, because that's an important skill set to understand as an entrepreneur looking to do this, is there's that value that comes there. And so when they have that emotional experience through a complimentary session, that's when there's value. They attach value to what they're doing. They can start to see, like, wow, if I were to work with this person, if I were to hire this person, I can see how they would actually help me. I can see how I could benefit from this. Now they can start to see themselves, parting with a certain amount of income, a certain amount of their money to, hire you and work with you. And that's the important piece right there. It's an experiential product that we offer, this coaching service. And so if we back up to, our message and, speaking our voice, if we never really define, who we can help with what specifically, what happens is that vagueness is there, and so we don't really stand out to anybody. We're not really speaking to anybody. And so, like, for instance, even with what I do, I help coaches, but more specifically, I help coaches transition to a full-time business. So see, what happening is you're picking a demographic of coaches, and you're not just saying, well, I help them even just grow their business. I'm saying, well, I want to help them transition to a full-time business. Whatever that looks like, full-time income, doesn't matter how many hours that is, but I want it to be, if they want to do this as their primary source of income, that's where I come into play. And I even go further, specify and say, like, hey, you know what, and I specifically work with and help on the skill sets of selling and marketing, because those are, I agree 100% that those are the most underdeveloped, underutilized skills of any entrepreneur for that matter, but the most necessary ones. You could be all the greatest coach in the world, but if you don't have mastering the skill sets of selling and marketing, or at least a better understanding of them, you're going to have a really hard time in your business. And so that's where I can get really specific. So I want you to be able to do the same. And when I work with people one-on-one, one of the first things that I help them with, if they haven't figured it out already, is, what is that one phrase, right? And this goes into our messaging. What is that one phrase that if people go to your website, they will read, and in a matter of seconds, they will know exactly if this is the right place for them or not, if this website is for them or not. It's a headline. And here's the format of it. And if you want to take this away from the call, like, this is the format that you can start to use as well. And if you go to my website, sellingcoaching.com, I role model it there. And it's basically an image of myself, which is what I recommend for you as well, an image of yourself. And then off to the left, have your headline. And mine says, for instance, helping coaches transition to a full-time business, right? Short, sweet, simple. It tells the person going there very succinctly who I'm helping and what I'm helping them with specifically, right? One sentence. Anything else after that, they can start reading and looking, and they can start learning more. But what I want you to be able to do is when someone goes to your website, and if you don't have a website yet, you have a Facebook page, you have a Facebook group, right? You can start off with that before you even have a website. So don't think like, oh, I can't launch my business till I have a website. Website's not necessary. What's necessary is a home where people can go that has some form of a lead capture, meaning when people visit there, they're compelled to, maybe they like your Facebook page, they join your Facebook group. If you have a website, they can subscribe to your database, maybe with a free offer, or a free PDF, or a report, or a checklist, or something like that. That's the objective of having any sort of landing space, be it a website or a Facebook page or group or whatever platform you're using. So remember, when they get there, whatever you have, you want to have that clear phrase. That's your message, right? That's your messaging, and that needs to be very clear. And so it can't just be like, I help people. Right? I help people, or I help people get unstuck. That's where a lot of where coaches come out, and that's where I was too. And that's why I'm passionate about helping you right now. Is starting to understand this. Is that a lot of times it's like, oh, I don't really know what I want to help people with. But what I'm going to urge you to start to do is start to think about that phrase. What is that headline phrase? Helping who with what specifically? So if you're going to write anything down, like helping who with what specifically, and start to fill some of that in. And if you can start to get to who, and maybe a label. So think about a label, like coaches or women or men or parents or moms or dads or single parents or widows. I mean, we can start listing a bunch of things off, but those are labels. Middle-aged men, you know what I mean? Teenagers. You could even go as far as, alcoholics or other labels. I'm trying to just give a bunch of different examples of what I mean by a label. So helping this label. And the more you can find a label that works, the better off you are, because, again, I relate things back to marketing and selling, because we have to understand that to grow our business, and we need to attract people and know what these people are, is if you can find a label, like I help coaches, right? Forget about what we're doing with them yet. But if we find that label, now we have better idea of where we can start looking online. So, or offline for that matter, So if you're doing live events and that's going to be more of your business model, like when I help people, when I mentor with them, and we say, hey, what type of business model do you want? Do you want 100% virtual? Like right now, I'm 100% virtual with my model. Everything I do is online. I never leave my home. It's fantastic, but some people may not like that. So maybe you're doing 100%, in person. I did my first 10 years of my coaching business in person. All I did was live events. The only thing I did online was email. But every time I was out there in front of people, I was traveling, I was in front of people, and that's what I did, live events. Or you can have kind of a hybrid of the two. It depends on the lifestyle you want to create, your time, if you like traveling, your family life, things like that. But either way is by being able to find a label, I help, who these people, you can start to look on and offline for books, for groups, for forums, you can ask yourself your questions like, where do these people gather? Where can I find them? Who's already done the work and gathered up all these people ahead of me that I can kind of, become a part of that group or that forum and start to contribute and interact with these people. And that's what we want to start to get to is by finding that label, we can then more easily find where these people are. Because otherwise, if our message is, well, I can help anybody with this. Of course you can help anybody with this. Can I help any entrepreneur transition to a full-time business? Absolutely, right? The elements of success are pretty much the same. Maybe some of the specifics are different with a coach. But either way, I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs before this. But by labeling it a coaches, now I know maybe what specific groups I can go into, what specific books or forums that these people will go to. Again, it narrows it down. Narrowing it down makes it a lot easier for us and with our messaging. And what happens is we actually get a more powerful voice the more we narrow, because now our message can be more valuable because we're speaking to them. I'm speaking to you today as a coach. I have coaches on the line. The people who will be listening to this recording are coaches, and so I can talk to you. I can talk to your struggles. I can talk to your challenges. I can talk to your wants and your desires, not only because I've been there, but we're going through that process together. There's other people on the line that are in the same position, right? So what that adds power, that adds value, because you're talking to that person. You could take the same message, the same call that I'm doing right now, and I could do this, let's say, for network marketers, or I could do it for State Farm insurance agents. I did a lot of work with State Farm in the past. Or I could do it for realtors, right? I could do the same type of thing. What is your message, and who do you work with, and how do you help them with? And by niching down, a realtor, I could just sell any home, or I could work with high-end homes, or with a certain population. And again, they become known for that, and they stand out, and they become a specialist. And so what happens is I could take this and do it for any different population, but I have more traction when I find that label. And I'm trying to give examples. So for you, same thing. You have more traction, you have more power when you find that label. You know where they are, right? So you can find them online, you can find them offline. You can find the people who have kind of done the work and gathered those people up. So maybe you can say, hey, listen, maybe what you contribute is different than what they contribute. I did a lot of work with a guy named Thomas Plummer in the fitness industry. Before my coaching life, I was a personal trainer. I had a personal training business. I was a national trainer. I traveled around the world, actually, different countries, doing fitness trainings, so forth and so on. And when I published my first book back in 2009, one of the guys I wanted to connect with was a guy named Thomas Plummer, who was a leader in the industry, fitness industry, did a lot of live events. I respected his work, never met him, but I had a connection through one of my connections that knew him very well. I asked for a referral if I could get in front of him. I asked him to endorse my book. He ended up reading the book and loving it. And he had a seminar company, and he liked my book and my information so much that he invited me to go on tour with him, because what I could add to his audience was something that he wasn't delivering. He was having other speakers, but it was all on the business of fitness. And he wanted me, of all things, to be the motivational guru. And I'm like, I can be the motivational guru. But what I'm saying is this is how you begin to collaborate with people is when you have a message, and when you take a stance and you put it out there, you can find the people that you want to connect with. I didn't want to connect with this guy because I wanted to be a motivational guru, but he happened to like my message so much, and he saw that thread in there. He felt as if, based on his need, that's what I could be for him. So I was like, fantastic. And then he invited me to his events, and I went on tour with him throughout the year. And he would pay me to go to his events, pay for my flight and hotel and food. he'd pay me to go to speak at the event, and he'd put me in front of, anywhere from 100 to 200 people at any one given event. I could sell my products and services at the event, and people would hire me as a coach. Pretty good deal, all because he liked what I did. And he had been doing it for 30 years. He built the database. His employees put people in the seats. I showed my ass up and just did my thing and rocked the world, and that's how it works, right? So I'm trying to show you is that when you have your messaging more clearly defined, you can now also find the people you want to connect and collaborate with, because you can look at it and say like, hey, here's what I can add to what you're doing. With that example, one of my clients right now that I'm working with, we helped him narrow his message down to working with IT professionals and helping them managing stress and advancing their career. And there's different facets to what he does, but one of the things that he notices with IT professionals is that there's a lot of stuff out there on the techie side. There's a lot of groups, there's a lot of forums, there's a lot of conventions where they just go and they geek out, right? And they're just like, learning about the latest and the greatest technology, and they love that stuff. But what he offers is, he's the non-tech guy, because he's talking about managing stress and better communication within in your job and with your work environment. Because oftentimes IT people are underappreciated, they're overworked, they're undervalued. But when there's a problem, it's just like they just need to get things done, and are just slammed in terms of work-wise. So he's working with them on that. So his angle is we're starting to teach him how to approach these people, finding who's doing this, who's gathering all these people for these techie things, and then finding out it's like, hey, can he come in as the non-tech guy and start to share about stress relief and things like that. And now it's a perfect audience, because he can complement what anyone else is doing, because now they have an audience, but they don't talk about that stuff, but they realize that stuff's really important. So I'm trying to give you a couple quick examples of how when you make your message and you narrow it down, you find that label, and it becomes more powerful. And this is what I mean today by I was talking about how do we strengthen our voice and find our message as a coach. We want to find that power, we want to find that label, and then more specifically, if we could take it one step further, if you find that label, moms, dads, single parents, you could go gender, you could go race, you can go age, you can go situation. I'm trying to give you different brainstorming ideas. Then you can say, well, what am I helping them with? And the more specific you can get with what you're helping them with. So for instance, I help coaches, but I didn't want to just help coaches grow their business, right? It's like, yeah, of course I want to help you grow your business, but I wanted a more specific outcome, right? I wanted to help coaches transition to full-time, because the more and more I talked with coaches, and even way back before I was full-time when I started off and going through coaching school myself, like I wanted to do it full-time. I was so passionate about it. And even though I loved what I did with personal training, I'm like, wow, this is my next thing. This is where I'm going to. I can see myself doing this. And I wanted to do it full time. And that's where I see a lot of coaches. And so I get specific in saying like, yeah, I can help coaches with a lot of different things, but I help you specifically with the transition of full time. That's where I want to focus. And I even go further and talk about that selling aspect. So same thing for you, who can you help? What's that label? But more specifically, what could you help them with? If you're going to help, let's say, moms, right? Okay, great. What are you going to help moms with? You're going to help them with stress. You're going to help them get back to, pre-pregnancy weight. You're going to help them with, maybe starting their own business, starting their at-home business, getting themselves, taking care of themselves. I'm trying to give you different examples there. So start to think like, well, what do I want to help them with specifically? And oftentimes the biggest fear when we, right away, as I found this with working with people, and even myself early on, was when we start to think about, bringing it down and narrowing down my message, we start to like, well, I don't want to exclude these people, or what if guys want to work with me, or what if women want to work with me, or what if, clowns want to work with me? I don't want to leave them out. And so we start to like, well, I don't want to miss out on business. But the thing is, and you'll hear this, but yet most people don't do anything about it, right? Is that you'll understand it logically, but you won't do it, you won't actually decide on it. And that's what I mean by doing anything about it, is you're missing out on business when you don't narrow down, when you don't pick what you're helping them out with, so I can help coaches transition to full-time. Can I help them, let's say, with their website and get their website going? Yeah, I've done that several times with my business since 2004, right? I have referrals, I have a whole bunch of stuff. Can I help them pick X, Y, and Z? Of course I can help them do that stuff. But where my main message is I come in is help them transition to full-time. So what I'm going to suggest to you is find your phrase, helping who with what specifically. That's your headline. That's what attracts people in there. And you have to remember, you want to find that headline that attracts people in. You've got to get people into your system. You've got to get people into liking your page, into your group, on your email list. You got to get them going like, wow, this guy, this girl's good. I like them. I like their message. I like their energy. I like who they represent, right? You got to start sharing what you feel, some opinions that you have, some thoughts or some experience that you have, so people can become attracted to that and become a part of your experience. And now remember, that headline, with I help who with what specifically, you might feel like, oh my God, well, I want to help them with so much more. I can help them with X, Y, and Z, not just A. Great, but you need to attract them with A, right? You need to attract them with that one thing, get them in, get them liking you, get their attention. And then once you get their attention, you can help them with other things. Not that you're going to dilute your message, but if you want to help them with X and Y, and then they came in because you said, I can help you with A, well, if they like your stuff and what you're doing, as long as the X and Y relates somehow back to A, then that's great. So I've worked with coaches and helping them, narrow down their message and their niche, and they're like, oh, they're a life purpose coach, right? And I'm a life purpose. And I'm like, okay, great. But life purpose is vague. Life purpose blends in. Life purpose doesn't stand out. What is life purpose really? How can someone attach, value to a life purpose coach? So this person's going to help me find my life purpose? Well, who are they? There's not enough value attachment there, unless they've already done a lot of work or they've educated themselves to a certain point or there's a certain amount of awareness. But that's not the average population, right? So you're going to have a tough time standing out to people if you're just life purpose, right? So we can say, well, like in that situation, for instance, if you feel like it's very vague like that, start looking at, what are some attributes that you have, things that you're passionate about. Even one of my clients I worked with, she was really big with like fun and adventure. And just like, she had she's like, well, I got a bag packed into my car at all times, just in case, I just leave work and like, you know what, I don't want to go home. I want to pick my kids up at school and we're going to go camping for the night, or we're going to go for a hike, or we're just going to go here. And, the more I talked to this person, she was all about fun and adventure. I'm like, well, that instead of just going out there with life purpose, you could start working with, couples or single parents or, married couples, or even if you just want to go a little bit more vague, men and women, is adding fun adventure back into their life so that they can connect more as a couple, or, you know what I'm saying? So working with couples in order to do that. So we can attract them with that message. That would be the fun and adventure, adding that back in for couples so they can become closer, have stronger relationships, etc. So ultimately they want to become better parents. You can figure out which different outcomes you want to work with them on, but now your message becomes about, let's say, fun and adventure, and you attract them with that message, and you become that fun and adventure person for couples. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to be working with bigger, deeper life purpose stuff, let's say, especially in relationships with couples, it's like, well, how do you start with the heavy stuff anyways? But if you go out and you get a couple to hike or to, shoot hoops in the backyard, or go for a bike ride or go for a hike together and talk a little bit, you're going to connect and you're going to laugh together a little bit, and all of a sudden you're going to feel a little bit closer. And you do that repetitively over a few weeks or even a day. Now you're going to be more apt to want to talk about the heavier, deeper stuff or the more emotional things. So it's like that's where you got to kind of start with them anyways. So you could be the life purpose coach on the back end, but attract them through the fun and adventure, and be that person. Keep it light, keep it fun, and be that brand and crush it. And so you are that go-to person because it's a need, right? And there's not a lot of people that I see doing that stuff. But then you can be that life purpose coach in the background because now they come in, they know you, they like you, they trust you, they respect you. And now when they're in on the back end, you can, like on calls like this or other education, you could be talking about some of those deeper things, more of the spiritual side, more of, a meditation or yoga or whatever else things that you specialize in, and they're ready to receive that because they've come into your house, and now you can show them around your house and they're receptive to it. But you got to get them in the door first, and if your door is so wide and so narrow, it's just like they just walk by it, or if they come in, they just drift out really quickly because there's not as much perceived value there because you're not speaking to them. You're pretty much speaking to anybody. And that's where I really want to go with today is really starting to show you how you can start to create that value, but by narrowing that down, and just being aware and hopefully maybe even validating maybe some of your fears around narrowing it down, because or not wanting to narrow it down because you fear you're going to miss people, you're going to lose out in business, but rather no, you're going to the longer it takes you to narrow it down and decide on that, the more business you're missing out on, because then it also just, you don't know what the heck you're doing every day. Whether you have 3 or 4 hours a day for your coaching business, or you get 30 minutes every day because you're working another job right now to build up to that full-time coaching business, is whenever you have time, it's like you don't really know what you're supposed to be doing or where you're supposed to be doing it or what you're supposed to be talking about. Having a strong, clear, distinct message also guides you in respect of like, well, now I know what I'm talking about. It makes content development so much easier. I could do a call like this and I come up with a topic, the day before, promote it, and I have a few thoughts in my head and I can run with it because I know who I'm talking to. I know what they need. I know what they want. I have the experience with that. And that's where I'll lead into this last piece is going to help you get to this label, and what you can help with them with specifically is you really got to look to your past experience, and when I say experience, it's not like something you'd put on a job resume. It could be, so it could be past work experience, school experience, or just think about life experience. You've been through challenging times in relationships or a divorce, or things with your children, special needs, situations with family. I mean, I'm not going to go into the very details, but I mean, anything, even like alcoholism or abuse. I mean, anything like that. You've had problems, you were an athlete in college. Look to your past. Look to things that you thrived in, things that you loved, things that you were passionate about, things that people are like, oh my God, they're so good at this. It could be swimming. It could be basketball, right? One of my clients, he's just passionate about sports, his biggest thing was he's working with, with his son. His son wanted to play pro basketball, and him and his wife went through, a lot to try and get their son to play, pro in college. Not pro, but I mean, at a Division A school or a big name school, Division I basketball. And he didn't actually get into the school that he wanted to, but he did play in college. But now he's graduated from college and he's coaching at a Division I school. But he was passionate about that process, and so now his niche is actually it's triple threat athlete, and he's working with the parents and the athlete, kind of as a unit, and helping them achieve their dream of getting their student athlete into the school of their dreams. And he's working on them as a student, as an athlete, and also on their mindset as well. So he's kind of combining those three aspects into that triple threat athlete, working with the parents. So a very unique niche, but again, I'm sharing that example because we're leveraging what he's passionate about, what he knows. He's very knowledgeable around those areas through his experiences, and that becomes his why he's doing what he's doing. And that's a thread. The reason I'm doing what I'm doing, you go to my website, sellingcoaching.com, and you go to the About page, about me, and the first thing there is why I'm doing what I'm doing, why selling coaching. And that's what drives me. That's what people start to resonate with and connect with. So we've got to look at, why are you doing coaching? Okay, well, you're doing coaching most likely because, you were going through some type of transition in your life, no matter what it was, challenging time, hard time, even if it was a great time, or maybe you just wanted something more. You want to transition out of your job, whatever it was, is you sought out, you came across coaching and you saw it as a solution, and you went to a school or you took some courses online, you experienced coaching, and then you're like, wow, this blew me away. This transformed my life. I love coaching, and now it's like I want to do this. I want to help other people with this because I believe in it so much. But the thing is you can't make a business off of coaching, right? Your why isn't. When I say you can't, I don't want you to think like, well, you can't. I'm going to say it for the sake of emphasis. Is when I say you can't make a business out of coaching, Coaching isn't the why, like, oh, I'm passionate about coaching, so that's why I'm coaching people. It just doesn't resonate. There's nothing to like connect with. It's like, okay, well, coaching transformed my life. Okay, great. But it's still, coaching itself is such an ambiguous, misunderstood topic that it's hard for people to relate, right? So if you can say, coaching is the actual vehicle, right? People don't care about the vehicle. They don't care how they get to A to B. They just want to get from A to B, right? So, but now for you is now, what's your why? So if you go back to your experience, like the client I worked with, I shared you with about the IT person, right, who's helping them with stress. He was going very vague, and then I said, well, what about your past experience? And he was a frustrated IT guy, and he loved IT and he wanted to work with IT, but it's just like he was just so undervalued and underappreciated and overworked, and it's just like every place he was at, it's just like it was stressing him out, and he stayed in it because he loved IT. Whereas I'm like, well, if you were to start working with those IT professionals and helping them understand this and communicate this and manage their stress, improve better working relationships, how do you feel about that? Does that excite you? He's like, oh my God, absolutely. And so that became his label, those IT people, and helping them with what? It's that stress, and it's managing that working relationship and improving communication so that they can feel valued, love their job, or move on, find something new, right? So that became his message. And so I share that here again because I want you to start to look at your past experiences, your past passions. I want you to have an opinion. I want you to have a voice on something. I want you to take a side. I want you to be decisive about something. I want you to piss some people off. In other words, not on purpose. I'm not saying, oh, just write something to piss somebody off just to do it. I'm saying inevitably when you have a strong message and you have opinions or you have experience in the way people should be doing certain things, you might upset some people, you might ruffle some feathers, and that's a good sign. That's a good sign that you're taking a stance, that you're taking a side. If you never take your side, you're in the middle, you're wishy-washy, you're back and forth, you're vague, and you just blend in and people just move by you. You know what? Some people will like what they see, some people won't. But you're not going for everybody, you're going for the people that like your stuff. And when you take that side, in other words, when you narrow down that niche, when you take that one message, you know what? Everyone's not going to like you. Everyone's not going to be attracted to it. But there are going to be people that are very attracted to it, and then they're going to be very attracted to you and your energy and your message because you're taking a side, because you're telling them what to do. One of those posts on one of the threads I work with, one of the groups, it was about business cards, right? And like, oh, I'm getting ready to, I got my logo done, so I'm going to print some business cards. Any recommendations on the format and blah blah blah. And I take a stance on business cards. You shouldn't have business cards. I don't think you should have them. I mean, there might be a couple, niches where you work with a corporate environment or something like that, where yeah, maybe you have to have them just because you have to have them, right? But even in those situations, they're still pretty much useless because they get thrown away. And I took a stance, and there's a lot of reasons why I back that up with. It's not just, oh, business cards are useless. I could give an hour call on why not to have business cards and what to do instead. But I take a stance, and you know what? In the threads, and I'll watch the threads, and some people respond, and you can tell some people are against it. You can tell some people don't like that answer, things like that, and I'm okay with that. I'm not trying to piss anyone off, but what that is that's a sign of taking a stance, having an opinion, and as a coach, here's the inherent challenge I believe that we have, because this is what I went through. Is that what initially attracted me at least to coaching was, and what we're taught if you went to maybe more of a formal education of a coaching school, is that, we're objective, right? We're non-judgmental. We're not the expert. It's not our agenda. It's the client's agenda. It's the client is the expert. It's what they want, and they want to go. We're there to facilitate and dig up and help clarify and really listen to them, to hear things that they can't even hear themselves. Be willing to, spit back to them and clarify, what no one else would be willing to, spit back to them, right? So that kind of almost makes us very ambiguous and vague, right? Because we're not taking a stance. We're not taking a side. If we're objective, right? If we're not the experts, what are we, right? So what I'm asking you to do now is do that when they hire you in the right situations. But before that, you've got to attract them somehow. So if you're working with single moms, single parents, or different IT professionals, or whatever label you're picking, pick something that you have that experience with, like I said, so you have a thought, you have opinions, that you have experience. Talk to that experience. And the reason why that's so important is because the more you share about that experience, and even you share about things that you've gone through, now you make it personal, meaning you're sharing yourself as a person. And those of you that follow me in my private Facebook group, get my emails, for instance, and you're seeing this stuff, so watch my videos, but especially like even my emails and a lot of my posts, I share a lot about just myself as a person. Those people who follow me know, like what I did this weekend. It was my dad's 73rd birthday, and I went up to Orchard Beach, Maine, and they know who was there, and they know last weekend it was my grandmother's 96th birthday, and I share those things with people. I get personal in my video. I don't have to get like super personal, super deep, but it's just like I share about myself, and you start to share about your experiences, and that's what I want you to start doing is sharing about these experiences around your past work or experience around these issues and matters, and then throw in some coaching things. Throw in some ask them questions. How does this relate to you? If you're connecting with what I'm talking about, you can throw a question back to them and say, what's your first step, or what would be a different thought? You can use those coaching skill sets and questions to start to get them to think differently or help shift their perspective. But talk about something that they're going to connect with, and they start to see you as like, wow, they understand me. They know what I'm going through. They know how I feel. I feel like I can talk to them. I feel like I could feel understood. I feel listened to. And those are the values that those are the aspects of a person that they don't get in their real lives because everyone else is too busy. Everyone else, yeah, they might care, but do they really take the time to listen to hear what they have to say? Plus, all those people in their world are attached to their situation, whereas we aren't, so that we can listen to them. But we share that information with them. We share our experiences, and that makes us a real person. And it also helps us as a coach not have to feel like, oh my God, I have to have my life together. I have to be this perfect individual who has my health and fitness together, and my business, and my relationships, and my finances. And it's like, oh, I barely have any of that together, maybe. And you know what I mean? You might be thinking that, and then you're like, all right, well, who am I to be sharing this or talking about this? And it's like, well, you've gone through this. You've had the disease. You've gone through the relationship. You left the relationship. You entered the relationship. You had the child. You quit the job. You did the what. You fill in the blank. You know what I mean? You went through that experience. This is about life experience. That's what the value is. There's our formal education, and then there's life education. The value is in life education. I'm not going to knock formal education, but I'm going to say that life education is priceless. Life education is where it's at. I can go to school all day, but as soon as you put me in the room, slicing up the person, doing heart surgery, it's like, well, no, I can't get that from a book. I got to be doing that, for years before I can actually do it myself. So that's where your value comes from. It's not from a book or from a classroom. So share that. Share what you've been through. Share how you got through it, or how maybe you've gotten through it to a certain point so far. And that's where you can start to get that strong stance. And that's where you can start to help identify, going back to the beginning of the call, of that headline that you could put on your website or your platform where you're sending people to, of helping who with what specifically. That's where that message is, and that's where your value comes from.